really good to be here with you all. My name is Justin. I get to serve as the teaching pastor, and I'm glad there are those of you that are tuned in online with us, so we're glad to have you in the room as well, and I know even some in the family space, and so I'm glad that you're here and we get to connect with you and be together this weekend. And so as we get started here, I'd like to share a story that I came across that's going to connect with our topic and theme for today. And it starts with Abraham Lincoln, so we're going to look at his face right here in just a moment. Okay. Abraham Lincoln was once accused of being two-faced on the issue of slavery by Illinois Senator Stephen Douglas. And with a calm, warm smile, as you can see, he responded, "If I had another face," here's what he said, "if I had another face, do you think I'd be wearing this one?" And that was often how Lincoln would diffuse insults, right? Overlook offenses. Things that were meant for offense, he would turn to humor. He overlooked insults. He even brought his enemies, political enemies, what would be political enemies, really close. He actually brought them in on his cabinet to help make decisions because he felt that they were the best people with the skills for the job, even when they badmouthed them to the press. And here's what he said about offense. He says, "We should be too big to take offense and too noble to give it." Right? Interesting. I can kind of tell from the way you're talking, like how you feel about that quote. So, yeah, but this is my thought. I'm just going to submit it to you. We may like this, but the question is, do we live it? Right? We often think or feel we have a right to be offended. And when I talk about offense, here's what I'm talking about. We think or feel we have a right to offense, to feel hurt, insulted, upset, or resentful because of someone else's words, actions, or behavior, often because it is perceived as disrespectful, unfair, or contrary to my values, beliefs, or dignity. That's what I mean by offense. Right? That's what I mean by offense. It's a long definition, so you don't have to memorize it, but I want you to see it. We often think we have a right to be offended. Let me ask you this, and you don't have to yell it out. It could get real awkward if you do. When was the last time you were offended? Some of you are like, "I'm offended you even asked that question," right? Let me ask you this, what was it about? You can hold it in your head. Here's some examples. Thinking about it from a workplace scenario. Maybe it was an email that came in. Nothing, I should say nothing. Few things get communicated as clearly in email as you'd like them to be. Maybe it was an email that lacked some tact or kindness, or included some kind of request that made you think, does this person care about my time at all? It lacked empathy for my work-life balance or schedule. Or maybe it was an underhanded remark that somebody said and it was cloaked with sarcasm and you were offended. Or you're talking to somebody and you're having a conversation and they seem short in the conversation or kind of cold or distant, or you find they're very distracted and you're thinking like they're just not giving me their attention at all, and we get offended. We get offended. Let me ask you this. Ever been offended by somebody who texts just okay? I don't know why you guys are laughing, right? Like thinking about it. This is my experience. When you text someone normally and they usually give you more than one word response, you start to create some expectations. And if they use emojis, you're like, "Oh, this is nice. This feels warm and kind." And then when they text you back just okay, my immediate thought is like, it's not okay, right? And then you're thinking like, what have I done to offend them? And then for me, this is where I've been before, like I'm offended that they're offended at whatever I did. All from a text. And I just say that because like the opportunity for offense is everywhere in the world that we live. It's not a new, right? Like think about it. Social media, news, politics. The opportunity for offense is everywhere. And if you respond, you'll offend someone with your response. And if you're silent, you'll offend someone with your silence. You can't win for trying. Am I right? Offense, the opportunity for offense is everywhere. And so many relationships end because offense was taken and held on to. Parents, they write off their adult kids because there's some kind of offense. But I'm going to say this, like in a millennial Gen Z generation, there are adult kids that write off their parents for offense too. And there's broken relationships. Divorces, they often occur because a pile of offenses gets too big to manage. or it just gets held onto for too long. And so we can look at offense and think like, man, it's maybe outside the church. We're Christians, or if you're a follower of Jesus, it's like, it's different. It's different outside and inside the church. Well, the latest Barna research data on divorce rates inside the church and outside, divorce rates are the same among practicing Christians and non-Christians, about 16% each. See what I'm saying? So I would just say, followers of Jesus, and if you're not a follower of Jesus, our opportunity for offense is the same. That's what I see. And here's how that pertains to today, because the series we're in, Growing a Spiritual Life, it is all about being conformed into the image of Jesus as his disciple, surrendering to his will, and growing to become more and more like him. And God transforms us through our head, our hearts, and our hands to become more like him as we surrender to his will. And then through new habits, we also surrender to him. And the new habit I want to talk to you today is this. This is what we're going to focus on. It's about becoming unoffendable. That's what I want to talk about. Becoming unoffendable. And this is what I want to say, and I want to encourage you, like, Christians should be the most unoffendable people on the planet. Why? Because they follow Jesus. And why? Because he was so unoffendable. He was unoffendable. And he had lots of opportunity for offense. And that's what I want us to look at today. I want us to look at I want us to see how he had opportunity for offense. And I want us to see 3 examples that we're to follow. And at the very end, I want to give you one response and how to do it. Sound good? Ready to rock? Ready to dive in? 9 o'clock, you're awake. This is so good. We're going to actually hop all over the place, but we're going to keep coming back to one central text, the Apostle Peter in 1 Peter. So you can kind of like focus on this one. We'll keep coming back to it. It's 1 Peter 2, verse 21. Here's what Peter says, as the Apostle Peter writes this. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. This is what's super cool. It says, to this you were called. And when Peter writes this, he's writing to followers of Jesus this. To this you were called, to follow the example of Jesus and follow in his steps. Peter, he's an eyewitness to the life of Jesus, which I think is really important. So he's not telling you to respond a certain way because of stories that he heard or came across or anything like that, things he was told. No. He, up close and personal, saw all of the opportunities that Jesus had to take offense, and time again, he saw Jesus choose not to. It's from personal experience. This is what he saw. This is who the author is. I want you to know he's a credible guy. And here's what he says of Jesus, having watched his life up close and personal for years. He said this: he committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. Jesus was innocent. Everything he did, everything he said, he only gave the full measure of truth, grace, love, and everything he said, acted, thought, or did was fully all of those things simultaneously. Us people, we're very different. I'll give you truth, I'll withhold the grace sometimes, or vice versa. Jesus, not so much. Every time he responded, it was the full measure of all of these things. This says he didn't have anything to apologize for. There's nothing. He's perfect in behavior, speech, in all ways. And this is what's interesting and cool. Not only does this right here describe Jesus' character, and it does it really well, but it also explains, when I look at it through the lens of offense, why Jesus, if he had taken offense, he would have been completely justified, because he wasn't wrong. But here's what Jesus did, and this is what we're going to keep coming back to, this verse. When they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. And so here's the first example. If we're to follow in his steps, this is for you and I. All right? First example, here it is. When insulted, he did not retaliate. That's the first example to follow. We're going to become people who are unoffendable. When he was insulted, he did not retaliate. He didn't insult when insulted. And here's what Peter saw. And I want to just kind of like go through some high-level examples here and kind of tell some stories. Here we go. There's one time Jesus was accused of violating the Sabbath. The interesting thing about that is he invented the Sabbath. He's the Lord of the Sabbath. So they're like, you broke the Sabbath. It's like, but I invented it. Like, it's his idea. Like, you think about that. It's like, you could have taken offense. What an insult. You violated this. Man, here's another one. Another time, Jesus is on his way to heal this little girl who's sick and on death's door. And he's making his way through the crowd. And as he gets there, and actually she already passed away and died. Everyone in the room is mourning and wailing because this little girl and her parents are there, right? They're just sad and distraught. And Jesus says, she's not dead but asleep, because for Jesus, that's all death is, right? And they start laughing at him. How offensive. And you know what he does? He doesn't retaliate, right? When insulted, he didn't retaliate. He just asks them to leave the room, and then he raises her from the dead with, sweetheart, get up. Little girl, get up. That's so cool to me. I mean, if any of us were in that situation and we're going to help somebody and they laugh at us, be like, fine, you don't leave the room, I will. Not Jesus. When insulted, he did not retaliate. And even his family insulted him. There was another time after Jesus had healed a man who was demon-possessed and he was blind and mute. After that, it says Jesus entered a house, and the crowds began to gather again. Soon he and his disciples couldn't even find time to eat. And when his family heard what was happening, they tried to take him away. He's out of his mind, they said. Whew. He's insulted by his own family. It's like, isn't family, no matter what, isn't family the one that's always supposed to be there? But when insulted, he did not retaliate. And then not only his family, in that same moment, it says the teachers of religious law who had arrived from Jerusalem said this of him: he's possessed by Satan, the prince of demons. That's where he gets the power to cast out demons. And you're like, how insulting is that? You ever been offended because you felt like you've been so badly misunderstood? Jesus gets that, right? He gets that. And I mean, from Jesus' perspective, think about this, like the truth and reality, because he sees it clearly. He came to defeat sin and death, to destroy the power of the devil for all time. On the cross, that's what he came to do. And they're saying, no, you're with him. Oh, how offensive. But this is Jesus' response. When insulted, he did not retaliate. Look what he does. Jesus called them over and responded with an illustration. How can Satan cast out Satan, he asked. That's a fair question. Then he says, why? A kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. Similarly, a family splintered by feuding will fall apart. And if Satan is divided and fights against himself, how can he stand? He would never survive. And I just look at this and I think, like, that's truth, not retaliation. That's just truth. It's like, you can speak truth. Right? When you're offended, by all means, you speak truth. Do it with gentleness and respect. Do it with love for their benefit. By all means. And this is what I see Jesus doing. And I love in the text it says he called them over. He didn't yell at them. He didn't rebuke them. He didn't shame them publicly. But he called them over. He's like this unoffendable, gentle shepherd teacher is what he does in this moment. I think that's like, when insulted, he did not retaliate. And then get this. Fast forward way later in the story, right? After the Jewish leaders, they lied about him and they subjected him to an illegal at night, an unjust, unfair trial. He's condemned to death, and they're on their way to bring him to the Roman governor to get the sign off on the death, right? To get the sign off on the execution. And as he's on his way out, this is what it says they did to Jesus. Then they spit in his face and they struck him with their fists. And he was blindfolded while this is going on. It says others slapped him and said, prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you? How insulting. I mean, like, they hit the face of the one who speaks, who is the word of life. They insulted the one who holds all things together, who holds all creation together in heaven and on earth and all of it. They hit the mouth of the one who spoke life into dust. when insulted, he did not retaliate. And my thought is, if Jesus, who had every right, did not get offended, what gives me the right? And so there may be a thought, and some of you may say, well, what about that one time Jesus turned over the tables and the temple courts? And not only that, but it sounds like he fashioned a whip and drove them out with the whip. And you look at that and you'd be like, well, it seems like it's okay to be offended at some point. When you look at that, well, this is what I think we need to understand, right? This is what James, Jesus' brother, says. He said, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. And then this is really profound. It says, human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So like whenever we see God, his response, he gets angry at unrighteousness. That evokes an anger, unrighteousness. But his judgment is perfectly just. Jesus is fully God and fully man. He was fully God. My nature and his nature, very different, worlds apart. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, well, wait a second. His judgment was perfectly just. When he goes over and throws over the table and says, they've taken my house of prayer and they turned into a den of robbers. See, God, when he responds that way, it's to unrighteousness. Jesus, his perfect discernment. My human anger doesn't know the line between righteous and unrighteous anger. My discernment isn't perfect at all. Jesus's is. So all that to say is, if human anger doesn't produce the righteousness God desires, then I probably shouldn't be the one entrusted to make the call to fashion a whip and drive people out. That's not my call. I shouldn't be entrusted with that. But Jesus can be. He's perfect. We have very different natures. I wanted to share that. But what I see when I look at Jesus, right? So when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. So here's the second example. When he suffered, he made no threats. I'm not like making up anything new. This is just 1 Peter. This is just way better than any way I would ever say it. This is it. When he suffered, he made no threats. And Jesus suffered a lot. He suffered physically, but he also suffered relationally a lot. For example, Judas had followed him, like one of his closest disciples, for years at this point. And he betrays him and he sells him out for 30 shekels of silver. And before he goes to do that, and Jesus knows what he's about to do, here's what Jesus says to Judas the night before he's crucified. What you are going to do quickly. Do you hear a threat? I don't hear a threat. Because when he suffered, he made no threats. And then later on that night, Jesus goes into the garden. After Judas betrayed, Jesus goes into the garden and he's praying with some of his disciples. And then Judas shows up leading an armed guard of Roman soldiers armed to the teeth to arrest Jesus. And Jesus knows what's going on. And here's his response to Judas. He says, do what you came for, friend. What? I mean, I wouldn't say that. I would say something else. And if I were going to say friend, it would be with a lot of sarcasm. But Jesus did not. This was sincere because his heart was broken for what Judas was about to do. That's what I think. You see what I'm saying? It's like when he suffered, he made no threats. In fact, in this one moment, Peter gets offended for God, for Jesus. He gets offended for him. And he takes the sword out and he starts swinging it around. Doesn't kill anybody because he's not good with the sword. He cuts off somebody's ear. Not a swordsman, it's a fisherman. And here's what Jesus tells him. Do you think I cannot call on my Father and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? That's not a threat, that's just a fact. And he didn't threaten that. Like he didn't threaten it, he told Peter that. See what I'm saying? When he suffered, he made no threats. They take him from the garden and they have that unjust trial at night and then they bring him to the Roman governor Pilate, and Pilate has Jesus flogged, which means beaten with this cat of nine tails in an inch of his life. And then the people are calling for Jesus' crucifixion. And Pilate's thinking, this man hasn't done anything deserving that I can find of crucifixion. And he talks to Jesus and he says, why don't you talk to me? Pilate demanded. Don't you realize that I have the power to release you or crucify you? If ever there was a time to assert your power and authority and make a threat, now is the time. Jesus did not, and he was silent. And the Roman soldiers, they stripped him and they beat him and they smashed a crown of thorns on his head. And I think when I've thought of crown of thorns, like I see pictures, it's just like this little small, like skinny crown of thorns, which sounds terrible enough. But this is probably more accurate. It's like a helmet that would have just been squashed onto his head. This is after he'd been already flogged and whipped. They put a purple robe on him, and they mocked him as the king of the Jews, and they made him carry his own cross to the site of his own execution. Insulting, suffer. And then they crucify him there. And while he's dying, they're still not done insulting him. They're not done. They wouldn't just let a dying man die. The Jewish leaders and the onlookers insulted him. And they said, say he saved others. Let him save himself. And the Roman soldiers, they jumped into, right in the same moment, if you are the king of the Jews, save yourself. And they said it with ridicule and scoffing. And even one of the other criminals who was also in the process of dying insults him too. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, he's dying. My friends, he's dying. And all of this stuff, he suffered all of this stuff relationally, socially, physically. He's suffering, and he never made any threats. And then at this moment on the cross, if ever there was a time to advocate with your power, he could have called for power. He could have brought retaliation on everybody. And all of these people, they intended offense. They meant to offend. They meant to hurt and wound. They brought suffering. And he could have opened his mouth. He could have said anything. And here's what he opened his mouth. And he said, Jesus said, at this moment, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And I just look at that and I want to say this, like, I do not know who needs to hear this. But if you are thinking I'm here and I think I have offended God too bad, he doesn't want anything to do with me. My past is too much, my sin and the weight of, I cannot stand underneath it. And you're thinking God doesn't want anything to do with you. If he said this from the cross, you are not too far gone. Turn from sin and turn towards him. Come to Jesus because he is the one who gives abundant life. He's paid for your sin through the cross. Be set free. See, because when I look at Jesus, his love is overwhelming. When he suffered, he made no threats. And it was like, why? He would have been justified if he had. He would have been justified in anything he decided and determined to do. Why? Because the good news is he became unoffendable and went to the cross so that I might be set free. So that my sin that I could not pay for, give me 1,000 lifetimes, it's not enough. I could not pay for it. I could not do anything. I can't check enough boxes to take care of my sin. There's nothing I can do about it. But Jesus, he paid for with his blood, and he was offendable for my sake so that I might have the life he deserved. And so, if you want to take hold, that gift that I just, like, that's a gift. Freedom is a gift. Freedom from sin and death and its consequence, that is a gift. If you want to take hold of it today, or you turn from sin and turn towards Jesus. Trust him as your Savior. You can't add anything. There's not enough boxes you could check. You can't add anything. And follow him as a disciple. And if that's a decision that you have made or want to make today, will you text the word Jesus right here and let us know? As a church and as a community, we want to walk alongside you. And I want to say this, like, every single time, there's a real person on the other side of this. If you don't respond to their text, you're not blowing off a robot, you're blowing off a real person. But they won't be offended, don't worry, okay? Just saying, they won't be offended. When I look at Jesus, I think Proverbs 19:11 applies really well to the king, the ultimate king. It says, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. It's like, this is what I think is so cool. Jesus That's what he did. He overlooked an offense. Every offense. He overlooked every offense. Every opportunity for offense. He overlooked that. And it didn't make him weak. It didn't make him a pushover. It didn't make him a doormat. In fact, it made him all the more glorious. And what's cool is we were talking about this as a teaching team, and our worship arts director, Stephanie, she was talking about, and when we overlook an offense, it's to our Father's glory. I thought, that's great. That's good. That's right. I'm going to say that. I'll give her credit. I don't know if she's in here right now, but she gets credit. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. And Jesus the King, he overlooked every offense. He rejected every opportunity to take offense. And so this is the question I have for you, is will you do that? Like if you're looking for a litany of next steps, how do I overlook an offense? I don't have that. But I've got one response. Opportunity for offense, you live with it. We live with it. It's coming your way. But in every opportunity for offense, it is to your glory to do this. Here's the one thing. Overlook the offense. Overlook the offense. Overlook the offense. What are the rest of the next steps? That's it. That's all I got. It's one. Overlook the offense. This is the one response. And you're saying, well, how? I'd like to. Well, my question is, how is Jesus able to do it? And when we go back to 1 Peter, we see the third example in how. Here it is. Look at this. Going back to verse 23. When they hurled the insults, he didn't retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. That's how. I want to say this because it's like I don't have anything else but faith to offer. It's always faith. How is Jesus able to overlook every offense? He trusted his Father. He trusted God. When he overlooked the offense, and I want you to hear this, I'm not he didn't condone what they said. He didn't condone what they did. He didn't find it acceptable or pleasing. He wasn't sweeping it under the rug. No. It wasn't approval. It wasn't weakness. It was faith. That's what Jesus was doing. He had faith that his Father would vindicate him, uphold justice, judge, and defend in his time. That's the question. It's like at the core of overlooking an offense, are you going to try to take your own justice, which is based on human anger, which doesn't uphold the righteousness that God desires, or are you going to trust God to do what he can do perfectly, what only he can do, and do it perfectly? And will you trust God like that? And will you allow him to transform you into an unoffendable person? So when I think about this, it's like, because of the cross, they put Jesus on the cross and he died. They took his body off and they put it in the tomb, thinking that was the end of the story. But on the third day, the tomb was empty. And I believe it's because he was raised from the dead and he appeared to witnesses, which means he defeated and conquered death. So I want to just say this. If somebody can beat death, then I trust them to do whatever they say they can do. Jesus, he defeated death. I trust him. I put my confidence in him. He's the one that's going to be able to judge perfectly justly. So the cross demonstrates his love for us, but it also demonstrates his power, that he keeps good on his promises. And if he says we can entrust ourselves to the one who judges justly, I'm going to say, let's do it. Let's do it. You and I don't need to take offense because God will defend. He will handle it. I can't anyway. And so the Apostle Paul describes what this looks like. And he's following in the steps of his master, Jesus. And here's what he says at the end of the book, near the end of the book of Romans. He says, dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. Right? Human anger doesn't produce the righteousness God desires. But leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. Instead, here's our response in overlooking the offense. If your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. Now, I want to say this. Don't make that your prayer. Like I want to heap burning coals on their head. Like, no. This is what Jesus said. Your enemies, pray for your enemies and those who persecute you. This is a Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said this. This is just putting into practice. And here's what I think it means. It's like what I think that last part in doing this, you'll heap burning coals of shame on their heads. I think when you repay good for evil, and you don't take offense, even if you have opportunity to, and you repay good for evil, what that will do is I think God will work through that to bring conviction and exposure in that other person, and they will feel guilt and shame and desire to change. That's how I think God can use that. That's why I think that means. So this is my encouragement. And this is what this is all about. We're to become unoffendable. Our response to offense is like Christ. He was unoffendable. Now, I want you to hear me say this. By all means, identify in righteousness. You can call it out and call it what it is. That's truth. But when you do it with gentleness and respect. Call it what it is. But remember, we're not fighting against people. Like we take offenses at people, but we have to understand our war is not with flesh and blood. It's against the forces of evil in the heavenly places. People, they're spiritual prisoners of war who've been dragged into darkness and death by the evil one. Let's set them free. Let's not take offense. Let's take the gospel to them. We don't get to be angry. We bring that to the Lord. We don't get to be angry. We entrust it to God. And we give people the gospel. We share food and water and the bread of life, the living water with people. We don't retaliate. We don't make threats. We entrust ourselves to the one who judges justly. We don't take offense. We take the gospel. We share the good news of who Jesus is and what he's done. And we do it with gentleness and respect. We're unoffendable. Let's be unoffendable, people. Well, what we get to do right now, which I think is just a great response, is we get to go to the Lord through communion and connect with him. That's what we get to do. If you didn't get one of these, by all means, grab one in the back. But we get to remember how Jesus was unoffendable for our sakes, and he gave his body for us, and he shed his blood for us, that we might be brought close to God, that we could be with him. And so, in a moment, I'm going to pray, and what I want to invite you to do is surrender to him. Take this, and I would say before you do, take a moment to examine your heart and see if there's offense in there that you need to give to God. You need to let go of. And when I say let go of, I mean, in this moment, trust that to God because he's the one who judges justly. And then walk in freedom. So if you hold on to offense, it just creates bitterness. But Jesus came that we may have life and life abundant. So I'm going to pray, and then let's examine our hearts and take this as you feel led. Father, thank you for today, for the time that we get to connect and experience you and be in your presence. Reveal to each of us our next step. And if there is offense in a relationship, I pray right now that you would expose it and you would weed it out. That we would trust you with it, and that you would take that burden from us and we would walk away free. And we would be motivated and we become unoffendable people. Not because we're not perfect, not because we're perfect at all, but because we trust you, Jesus. And we remember how much you loved us and how you were unoffendable for our sake. And then we long to be transformed through that love to become more like you. So show each of us what this next step in this time is supposed to look like. And I pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Go ahead and take a moment right now. Father, thank you for this moment, this time to be able to connect with you. And I pray for every single person, myself right here in this, that you would reveal to each of us a next step and give us the confidence to trust you because of your faithfulness. Help us to do that. Thank you for your love for us. And I love you, Jesus. I'm grateful for your love for me. And I pray this in your excellent and wonderful name. Amen. So I'm very glad that each and every one of you were here. And I'll just say, if you need to take a next step, or if you feel God calling you to take a next step, walk right out, go to the right, and go to next steps. We'd love to connect with you and meet you there. Please go in peace. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next weekend, hopefully. See you soon.